what can still be planted in August, because you have to plant now in order for you to have a fall garden. And so if you think about where we're at right now, we have approximately 60 days until our first frost. So anything you stick in the ground at this point, you want right around 60 days or less until harvest. And so just think about what those vegetables might be. So we plant in two different ways. One is by transplants and the other is by seeds. One thing that makes fall a very good time for cool season crops, such as broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and kohlrabi, is that we have a very slow, prolonged cool down, whereas the spring is a very fast ramp up. And so a lot of these crops don't do well in the spring, but they do excellent in the fall. And they actually have a better flavor because you're harvesting them when the temperatures are cool. So right now is your time to be finding transplants to put in the ground. If you can't find transplants, it's a little late to be starting seeds, but if you're willing to cover them and do a garden extension, season extension, you might be able to have some of this up until November and December. And so just keep that in mind. If you have questions about season extension, feel free to reach out to one of the horticulture specialists around the state, and we can sort of walk you through on how to do that. But yes, you can grow this well into fall. Some of the seeds that you can sow right now are things like turnips, radish, lettuce, spinach, mustard, kale, beets, and peas. Now realize that the soil is still very warm. And things like lettuce don't germinate very well in warm soil. And so they may sit there for a good couple weeks until we start that downward trend on temperatures. There are ways to get things to germinate even when the soil is hot. Shading it, moistening it several times a day, creating a nice cover such with mulch or straw. So there are ways to keep them cool. I like to start them indoors and transplant them out as transplants. And if you do that, you utilize the cool temperatures of the indoors, but you always have to remember you're taking them from a nice, cozy situation indoors to a hot, windy situation outdoors, and you have to harden them off if you do it that way. But definitely any of these can be started from seed outdoors. Things that are marginal. Now I say marginal because some things you almost have to start back in the end of July to get enough time. But if you choose your varieties wisely and try to find things that are more like a 45-day or a 50-day, and like I said, less than 60 days, you can actually pull some of this off still, even if you're planting right now. Cucumber, squash, beans, and corn. So there are some short day varieties. Those are the ones that you need to target. Now, the further north you are in Missouri, remember that the earlier you're going to have to plant things to get a fall season crop. The more south you are, the longer you have to get things in the ground. So I'm down by Cape Girardeau in the southeast region, and so we can plant typically up until the third week of August. So we have quite a bit of time still in regards to number of days to get some of these things planted. But just keep in mind, if you practice season extension, you can have even longer past those 60 days that we're talking about. So just be prepared. Right now it's hot and dry. Our soils are dry and cracking. So I always suggest that water well before planting. And then you want to wait a day or two so that moisture sort of levels out and you can work the soil and make a nice seed bed. You don't want to get in there when it's too wet because you're just going to mud things up. And then the soil doesn't work well. So just be patient. Once you get the seeds in the ground, then you can mulch with a light layer of straw, light layer of mulch, or even peat moss. And that way you're shading those seeds so that they come up a little easier. I do know some people go as far as putting an actual shade cloth over their seedling area. They will also take a board and put it down over their seeds for a few days, and then they pull it off. Anything to give those seeds a little cooler temperature and moisture, and again, give it an opportunity to come up out of that ground. And just be aware that, if your seedlings come up and you start watering, make sure you keep watering, because this high temperature, low humidity days that we're fixing to have in the next week or two can really draw out that moisture in a hurry. And when it comes to seedlings, they are very fragile and they are very susceptible to drying out and dying. And so once again, if you start watering, keep watering.